My name is Jambre and welcome to the first episode of Analyse the Pros! Our game today takes place in the Hearthstone Global Games between the Czech Republic and Belarus, piloted by Stancifka and Fzmusko. In game, players are subject to a turn timer and a lot more pressure, so they might not always find the best line, but let's analyse in retrospect and see if we can.
Doesn't matter for not the first time. Just get him. Mushko playing for Belarus on the Pirate Warrior is going to have to say hello to Sivka's.
Our game begins with Belarus on the Pirate Warrior and the Czechs with Aggro Druid. Now, it's worth noting that deck lists aren't known in this tournament, so both teams aren't 100% sure on which deck variant they're against. Starting with Belarus, who are going first. You obviously don't want to keep Mortal Strike or Heroic Strike as their finisher cards, and not very useful in the early game at all. Bloodsail Raider I think is actually a bit of a trap. It's not so good against Aggro Druid, especially if you don't hit your 1-drop. You really want to be hitting Nazov's first mate most of the time because it trades really well and kind of keeps their board empty. If you pass turn 1 and play a 2-3 which summons a 1-1, the 1-1's not going to be able to kill anything on the Aggro Druid to start with because they all have 2 or more health. And the 2-3 is very, very vulnerable to getting value traded in from like a buffed 1-drop. I'm a huge advocate for pretty much full mulliganing for either Fiery Warx or Nazov's first mate as Pirate Warrior. They're the two highest win rate cards in the deck going from your mulligan phase. Cards like Bloodsail Raider are good in the mid game where you can maybe combo it with Bloodsail Cultist on turn 5 and you have the additional attack buff on it. In the early game it just trades kind of poorly and it's just not really a good card. You really want to be getting those weapons so you can start buffing them, start removing your enemy's creatures and making boards of your own. Looking at the Druid side, obviously the hand is insane. Kalaka Crawler is great against Pirate Warrior, Firefly and Bloodsail Corsair as well. You really want to have those 1-drops, especially 1-2s or 1-3s because they trade really well with Nazov's first mate, and you kind of want to keep the pirates off the board so they can't upgrade their weapon with a Bloodsail Cultist, because that's generally how Pirate Warrior snowballs into a victory. So having both the weapon removal and the early game and the pirate removal makes this starting hand absolutely insane. Don't keep Savage Roar though.
Mushko playing for Belarus on the Pirate Warrior is going to have to say hello to Sivka's little friend Golaka Crawler and Bloodsail Corsair. This is the Pirate Warrior toolkit of beating this deck. It's absolutely incredible. Even the double Fireflies in the opening. Holy moly. And this Golaka Crawler doesn't even have to come out this turn.
Right.
Not even at all. You could play the Corsair coin into Firefly. The Corsair, although not massive, taking the durability off the hook.
Belarus, being the geniuses that they are, rip Nazov's first mate right off the top, the best card in their deck. It makes their Bloodsail Raider keep look a lot more appealing. Obviously a very standard turn, you just play it out. You don't want to be swinging with the weapon, even if you suspect the opponent being Jade Druid. The 1-3 weapon's good at clearing up the 1-1 or 2-2 Jade that's likely to come out. And you're not sure at this point when you're going to be re-equipping your weapon, so you don't really want to be wasting the charges. Onto the Druid, and they have a lot of options turn 1. We know from the Warriors Mulligan that they kept 1 card and they haven't played it yet. And generally going first that they only kept 1 card, it's going to be one of either Nazov's first mate, Fiery Warx or Bloodsail Raider. Given that they didn't swing with the weapon, it's unlikely to be Warx or Nazov's first mate. We're going to have to formulate our game plan going forward, and in the first few turns you want to be trying to develop your board and try and get some value trades, especially into these 1-1s. And you want to try and keep the Pirates board empty going into their turn 3, so they can't upgrade their weapon with a Bloodsail Cultist or get any value trades with their Pirates with a Southfleet Captain. So what happens if you play Bloodsail Corsair? Well, you get patches, you remove a charge from their weapon, and you can use patches to kill one of their 1-drops, and then your remaining 1-2 can kill their 1-1. Seems pretty attractive, but in reality it's a bit too fast. It doesn't really matter if you reduce a weapon from 3 to 2. They can still swing with it next turn. It's much better on higher value weapons like Fiery Works or Arcanite Reaper. Additionally, your charge from patches is a very valuable asset, especially when you have buffs in your deck. So you kind of want to save that. If you don't have to use it, you don't really want to use it now. So to achieve our goal of value trading and removing the pirates before turn 3, we have one of two plays: Firefly coin Flame Elemental for 2/1/2s on the board, or just coining out the crab now. Let's talk a little bit about both and see how they stack up against each other. Start with the crab, right? You got the crab in your deck, you see a pirate, you want to coin that bad boy out and just start munching away. So we crab their 1/1 and we have a 3/4 on our side against their 1/1, ready to clear it up next turn. The problem is when we look at the Pirate Warriors, most likely turn 2 plays, being Fiery Works and Bloodsail Raider. Versus the Fiery Works are okay, they clear our crab, they trade their 1/1 off, and then we use our Corsair to deal with it, that's fine. The problem is Bloodsail Raider. If they play Bloodsail Raider, it comes out as a 3/3, they can use their Rusty Hook into our 3/4 crab preemptively, and then we're kind of forced to clear their board going into their turn 3 because we don't want them to be able to upgrade their weapon. So we have to kind of trade our crab into their 3/3 and then play patches with the Bloodsail Corsair, leaving us with just a 1/2 versus the opponent's turn 3 with nothing in our hand to directly impact the board. So let's compare this to coining out 2/1/2s. If we coin out the 2/1/2s, we set up 2 value trades against our opponent's 1/1s. They'll kill off one of our minions with their weapon, leaving us with just a 1/1 left over on the board and the opponent with nothing. Obviously this is a bit weaker than a 3/3 if we had a crab, but we would have a crab in hand available for us for our opponent's future pirates. So if the opponent were to play, say, a Bloodsail Raider on turn 2, we get to eat that up with a crab, which is insane value, and it puts us massively far ahead. We'll have a 3/4 and a 1/1 on the board against just the weapon from the opponent. If our opponent decides not to play a pirate on turn 2, that's fine. We can play our second Firefly and Flame Elemental and save the crab for our opponent's turn 3 or 4 pirates. In my mind, playing the 2/1/2s is absolutely the correct play, and actually playing the crab here I think is a sizable mistake.
But more importantly, you can get patches out to kill one of the pirates, because the Galactic Crawler can kill anything with a pirate tag. So you're looking at Naga Corsair, the Cultist, you know, some of the bigger minions as well, even the Taunt.
So he's almost a control for the first 2 turns here, because Pirates is not at all good at dealing with a wide board, and this hand with double Firefly and Egg Napper is going to go as wide as you like by turn 4 or 5, and he can save that crawler, as you were saying, for a big minion. He can save the Bloodsail Corsair if he wants to not go wide with patches until Arcanite Reaper comes down, if he wants to go that long.
Yeah, to be honest, even looking at it, maybe even just double Firefly is good this turn.
Right.
Just put 2/1/2s. They already beat the board that's down, you know, like by leaving a 1/1 alive effectively if you match everything up. And then you just Galactic Crawler the potential 2-drop. If the 2-drop's a weapon, then you can go Bloodsail Corsair.
Or just play 2 elementals the turn after, but no, he just wants to get a 3/4 on the board. Why not?
Oh, look at the claps from Mushko! Unhappy, although they're laughing, he cannot believe it. He's like, okay, I've just been Galactic Crawlered.
Turn 2 from the Pirate Warrior is pretty simple. You just play the Bloodsail Raider. You want to play the one you kept in your mulligan because your opponent already has a decent idea of what that card is anyway, and you kind of conceal the rest of your hand. Preemptively hitting the crab here is good. Your opponent's probably going to be wanting to clear your board this turn to stop you from upgrading your weapon with a cultist. So the crab's most likely going to be trading into the 3/3 anyway. So you don't want to be having to clean that up next turn. You want to be having your weapon attack ready for your opponent's other minions. If for some reason your opponent decides to trade into the 1/1 or has a buff for the crab, you can use the South Sea Deckhand to clean up the 2 health remaining on the crab next turn anyway, so it's completely fine to do this preemptive hit.
And you might be wondering why that took all of 75 seconds, but we can see there's a lot of choices there. There was definitely the option to just wait and kill a bigger pirate with this.
Yeah, and the Crawler just kills the Raider now. I mean, yeah, great. Great, you're heading damage.
Sure.
It's like, awesome. Oh, punished.
So now we see the awkwardness of our early crab play amplified by the fact that we drew patches as well. The only way to clear the opponent's board now is to play patches or hero power, and that just leaves us not developing our board much at all. value trading this turn or leaving up any of your opponent's pirates is not really an option. If they do get the 2 attack weapon from Cultist, then they pretty much get to kill one of your minions cleanly every single turn until their weapon runs out, and that's just going to lose you the game pretty much on the spot.
Sometimes punished. Patches being in hand, not the absolute worst for Druid, because at worst you can often play Patches and a buff in the same turn to get like a 2/2 charge, so obviously not great, but not horrendous either.
Quite a complicated turn. Aggro versus aggro can often get incredibly complicated incredibly quickly. Well, it's not going to do it slowly, is it? It can get incredibly complicated at the start of the games.
I wonder, so there's an option here I think for Sifka. I think Sifka has to clear the board because of Cultist being a card. So there's either Firefly Patches to clear, or you just Hero Power clear. But the problem with Hero Power is you don't develop anything yourself. So although you lose the Patches, maybe not completely terrible that it was drawn here. Just get some value and presents a Firefly onto the board.
Firefly on the board, not a lot of stuff in hand to deal with a big minion, and that might be an issue over the next 2 or 3 turns, but he should be able to go wide enough to start drawing for Savage Roar, to start drawing for any of those multiple buffs Lotus in his deck.
Going on to the Pirate Warriors turn 3, and we finally have some choices. They can play the 2/1 charge and the Bloodsail Raider this turn and clear the opponent's board if they want to, or they can play just maybe the Bloodsail Raider on its own, or just the Taunt. So to understand this turn, we have to consider our future draws and the possible punishes from leaving up this 1/2. So if we play a 3/3 this turn and leave up the 1/2, the only real punishes in terms of value trades is going to be Mark of your Charge, but then that leaves the Firefly on 1 health, which we can easily clean up with our weapon, so it's not even a huge punish if that does happen. In terms of stuff like Mark of the Wild, Mark of the Lotus, things like that, we can still value trade into the 2/3, so it's not really, it shouldn't really be a concern of ours. Using the Raider here or the South Sea deckhand makes some of our future turns a little bit more clunky. Let's start with the deckhand. If we were to draw Bloodsail Cultist next turn, if we kept the deckhand in our hand, we could upgrade immediately on turn 4. If we draw South Sea Captain, we get a charging 3/2, which we can use to value trade. So there's 2 benefits right there for keeping the deckhand in hand. Also, it's a very versatile card for finishing off high priority targets or pushing extra face damage when we have board. Using it to kill a 1/2 here, which isn't really a threat, honestly feels a little bit like a waste. Now playing Raider on this turn is also clunky in terms of our turn 5 usually. We have a lot of 3-drops in our deck, and they combo really nicely with the 2-drop Raider on turn 5. If we just have the Dread Corsair in hand going into turn 5, we're not going to be able to play 2 minions on the turn, we're going to have to just choose between one of them. And if we don't have any pirates on the board and we have pirate synergies, we can't activate them immediately by playing the 2-drop and then the 3-drop. So all things considered, that the 1/2 isn't really that threatening, and we really kind of want to save the 2 and the 1-drop for future turns to make a bigger tempo push. I really think the best play here is just to play the 3/3 Taunt. Yeah, Taunt can be potentially useful for protecting some of your damaged minions down the line. You can maybe sometimes get the Dread Corsair really cheap if you have an Arcanite Reaper, but in terms of making your future draws more smooth, having the cheaper minions still in hand is way more beneficial.
Yeah, often the way Pirate Warrior wins this matchup is actually playing the removal game. They actually just keep the Druid board empty because they've got so many little minions to do it with, and then they just win through having more, like, burst from hand, so to speak, as opposed to Druid relying on having a board to be able to burst. This can change a little bit with the introduction of living mana into the deck.
Yeah.
Because Pirate Warrior can like kill off all the minions, make all the trades, keep a bit of a board, living mana, and you're like, oh, I can't kill just like 6/5/5s. Like, this is awkward.
Yeah, that's the thing that Druid does now,
5/2/2s.
is it goes wide, you might be able to kill it with, like you say, living mana, and Finger as well is also capable of just making a board from nowhere. As well as, like, Eggnap is just a nuisance.
Yep. And no easy way to kill the 1/1s a lot of the time from the Eggnapper.
Deckhand. Down to only 2 cards in hand, but they are getting the board, and this is going to be awkward to deal with for the short term. Never mind. Mark of Visage looking absolutely beautiful here. Now it's just a case of what you want to set it up on.
On to Druids turn 3, and they have three reasonable options. They can either play 3 1-drops, or they can play Egg Napper, or they can play a 1-drop and immediately buff it with Mark of your Charge to make a 3-4. The downside of playing 3 1-drops now is that your future turns become a lot more clunky with Egg Napper and Mark of your Charge in hand. It's kind of hard to play both of them on the same turn. Additionally, if your opponent has the Cultist in hand, he gets to value trade with his weapon into your 1-2s, as well as with his Pirate. If you were to play the 1-2 right now and buff it with Mark, you open up Mortal Strike and Heroic Strike from your opponent as being okay plays, whereas if you went for the 1-drops or the Egg Napper, they would both be dead cards in hand. Additionally, if you use the Mark now, you lose out on the potential card draw you can get from using it on a beast, though that's not too relevant in this matchup, which is largely tempo driven. Also, if you were to spread your board very wide down the line, you lose out on the potential for making value trades with your smaller minions. If you were to play Egg Napper this turn, the problem is the hook from your opponent trades very nicely into the 3-1 part of your minion, and then the 3-3 Pirate afterwards can trade into one of your 1-1s. The nice thing, if they don't have a charger, they can't actually clear your whole board, so you have potential for Mark next turn, and it will be on a beast. All in all, none of the plays feel that great this turn, but I think I like Egg Napper the most just for the higher potential with Mark of your Charge down the line with the 1-1s from the Death Rattle.
You want to set it up on 3 minions?
Do you want to preemptively set up play Mark of Yashraj, or do you mean play it next turn?
Just play it next turn.
Yeah. Okay.
We just kill something with it next turn and everything is good in the world.
I think the Egg Napper is probably just fine, right? It directly challenges the Raider,
Yep.
and if the weapon goes into it, 1, you've done 3 damage. 2, that's probably not going to trade into 2 1-1s. If they do, fine, it stems the tide of damage anyway.
Not much choice from the Pirate where you kind of just have to play out all your minions. Obviously you kill the 3-1 with your weapon, and then I like trading the 3-3 into one of the 1-1s, but leaving one of them up's fine. I think it costs you too much of your board if you trade off the 2-1 into the 1-1, and you're just going to be over trading at this point, and you're not going to have enough resources to push enough face damage to close out the game. Killing off one of the 1-1s is fine. It protects you against a lot of buffs that the opponent can do, and if they do get through the taunt, it makes it a lot harder for them to kill off your 2-1 afterwards.
And you can just then splurge onto the board with all the 1-1s.
Yep.
Okay, so there's going to be the trade happening. And we might even see the deck hand go into the 1-1 here.
We might, but the Pirates have got to do damage at some point. I think you're right. I think we do see
You
it
play
going to
Zoo,
1-1.
though, right?
Yeah.
You just play Zoo against Druid.
Yeah, if the Druid runs out of minions, and sometimes it just gets stuck with all these Mark of Charge, etc. in their hand that just can't be played.
Yeah. And the benefit as well of playing Egg Napper, of course, is it leaves beasts on the board, so then you get the card draw as well.
Yeah, that's exactly what's going to happen if they aren't cleared up.
I'd be genuinely surprised if Mushko doesn't clear.
Yeah.
Like, what's 2 damage, right? Just who cares? You've got, you will draw. Oh, wow, okay. So I didn't go for the clear, valued the 2 damage and said there's a living mana for next turn as well. So this turn can be Corsair with the Mark of Yashraj.
Starting with the Druid's turn, Mark of your Charge is obviously the play. Very cleanly kills the 3-3 taunt and draws you a card, so we start with that. With our remaining 2 mana, we can either remove the weapon and play 2 1-2s, or just play 2 1-2s, or we can hero power down the 2-1. Removing the 1 attack weapon actually doesn't really achieve much right now. It's not going to be able to kill any of our minions on the following turn, so I don't like using the Bloodsail Corsair now. It's probably better to save it for an Arcanic Reaper or a Fiery War Axe, which the opponent might play next turn. If our next turn is most likely going to be living mana, then I kind of like hero powering down the 2-1. The reason being is if our opponent was to play Corcoran Elite, Naga Corsair, Bloodsail Cultist or South Sea Captain, then they can remove our board without losing any of their minions. If they don't get any of those minions, then we're usually going to be just pulling ahead anyway with the living mana.
Plays Bitter Tide Hydra, which is actually hard for the Pirate Warrior to deal with outside of already having a board and trading multiple low attack minions in. But when you look at Pirate Warrior, they actually have a lot of low attack minions that do less than 3 anyway.
Yeah, it feels like you're getting hit by a whole swarm of stuff, but actually you're just getting hit by a huge weapon and a huge dude. And
so you could even try and set up the Hydra into living mana, which would just be insane.
Yeah, on 26 health as well. So the downside of the Hydra can sometimes, you eat 9 and it dies. That's bad, but
Pyro Warrior can't really raise Hydra, like I said. I don't
Yeah.
think it does a good enough job in general. Do you like the Corsair here? There's a worry, right? So you could play the Corsair and then Arcanite Reaper gets equipped and you're like, okay. Or you could play the Corsair to stop a Cultist being played to extend the weapon, but the weapon is only a hook.
yeah, I think you just that Corsair is preventing them from killing you.
The Pirate Warrior's turn's pretty simple. Just play the Cultist, upgrade your weapon, and use it to kill off one of the minions, and then value trade with your 3-2, keeping your 2-1 alive.
To effectively heal to a large extent.
Yeah.
Now, the question is, Living Mana or Hydra this turn? I think Living Mana ends up being better, right?
The fact that the Hydra actually gets killed and you take 9, even though it's not a total disaster, just feels a little bit too... That feels like a lot you're giving away. Living Mana kind of just threatens to win the game.
Although the initial plan was to play Living Mana, now facing this board state, removing the weapon, playing the Egg Napper and playing the 1-2 is really good. Both the 1-2s threaten the 3-1 and the 2-1, and they'd be the same as if there were 2-2s in that scenario. And the Egg Napper also is a pretty big threat towards the 3-4, so I like just dumping that hand, it's great. Additionally, if you did play Living Mana and your opponent decided not to trade, you'd be left with only 1 mana next turn, and you wouldn't be able to develop anything at all, slowing down your game plan quite considerably. Also, the longer you save Living Mana, the more 2-2s you get.
My worry is, does Hydra get killed? Because you have the same amount of damage, right?
Right.
So you have 8 just on board as the Pirate Warrior, never mind the weapon. You're probably going to draw some more damage or another, like Frothing Berserker, still on the list, Corcoran Elite, for example. So you can actually just race the Hydra at this point, because a Hydra being on its own is way less scary than Living Mana with potentially 2 buffs in hand. Then suddenly that, or Savage Roar, right? Hydra getting Savage Roar is +4 damage. Living Mana getting Savage Roar just changes things, although it couldn't be cast.
Could be just immediately, but then if they haven't killed your stuff and given you some mana, you've probably won anyway.
Exactly, yeah. And if the Living Mana starts getting traded away, then you play Hydra and probably win, because it's been traded away, right?
He can, by the way, also just play the other 3 things in his hand.
That is option 3 that we didn't go too much into.
He can do this because this makes the Living Mana better, it delays the Hydra, and it actually challenges the board pretty well.
On to Belarus, and things are starting to look a little bit awkward. None of the value trades are looking very good. If you trade with a 3-4 into a 1 attack creature, then suddenly the Egg Napper can kill it in 1 hit. I think Belarus in this spot are a little bit worried about board buffs. We haven't seen any Mark of the Wilds or Mark of the Lotuses at this point. A board buff's just going to ruin you anyway, and you're going to lose the board. You don't have any minions in hand, all you have is a Heroic Strike. So I think I like the strategy where you just pretend they don't have a board buff in hand, and then try and maximize your outs for that line where they don't have it. So how do we maximize our outs when we have a Heroic Strike in hand, have no intention of playing for the board? Well, you just go face. Popping the Egg Napper actually kind of helps our opponent, as we have so many minions on 1 health. So let's just go even full face with the hook as well. Hopefully we can draw maybe like an Arcanite Reaper or a Corcoran Elite in the upcoming turns, and maybe push out enough damage to lethal our opponent.
That's us first, mate. Gonna refill that weapon slot, but not with the most scary weapon in the world.
And the minion that's already on the board gets charge.
So there's 13 damage if just Heroic Strike and everything to face this turn. How valuable is that? Because suddenly, you're not on a lot of resources as the warrior, and that Egg Napper is a bit of a pain. Because, yeah, you can kill it, but then it creates 2 more minions that kill your minions. So it's kind of rough.
Yeah, I'm just looking, if Belarus go face, what is the response from the Czech Republic?
But they can just trade away and play Hydra or Mana, right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing, because the Egg Napper kind of trades pretty well, and the whole board trades quite well in general. I wonder whether you just ignore the board and let them trade if they want to. Because you're still far away from being dead to Savage Roar.
Yeah, I think all face. Maybe you make 1 trade. Like, you can take a free kill if you want to. It's not a free kill because of Egg Napper, but you can take a kill.
I like this. Oh, okay.
Okay, so yeah, they take the free kill there, so the Egg Napper can't kill both things.
Yep. So just isolates the Egg Napper onto the board, which is nice. Living Mana is now an option if you want to go really wide, and now Mark of the Lotus has been drawn. It's kind of hard to not want to play Living Mana this turn.
It really is.
Knowing you can make them 3/3s the turn after.
There is the option to bump in the Egg Napper first to take up an extra slot on the board, so you can keep 1 mana in hand and Lotus immediately.
I like it. Why not, right?
The rest of the games kind of plays itself. The Druid just plays Living Mana and buffs his whole board, popping the Egg Napper first with correct sequencing.
Those additional minions mean there's only going to be 5, and this Mark of the Lotus is going to work out pretty well, and this is what we were saying earlier. Living Mana can sometimes just win you the game as there's no good response. Fire War Axe and Heroic Strike going to be 7 damage from hand, but is 7 damage enough at this point?
So 16 plus the ability to gain.
As the warrior, you're kind of forced to just go full face with your Fire War Axe and hope you can kind of close out the game, but there's not really any outs at all in your deck once your opponent does this.
Presented on the board,
Like you do.
from the Druid. Yeah, it's kind of funny because like the Force of Nature Savage Draw combo of old was 14 damage from hand. Like yeah, it's rough. This is not the same, but kind of, because how does a lot of decks clear this board? They normally don't, right? It's normally very, very difficult indeed.
And 7 2/2s is 14, and I'm sure that's no accident.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's how maths works, in fact.
I'm sure that is just math. Yeah,
That's just numbers.
This is day 2, maths lesson 2 for Lorinda here. Yep.
Okay,
7
so...
to there's Savage Draw, GG.
Except...
Good. Oh no, it's not GG.
Of course.
My maths! I was too busy mocking yours. 1 mana
Yes.
off.
And finally a little snippet that the Druid just makes sure not to take any face damage at the end so they don't die to Leroy Jenkins off the top.
The 1 fewer treants last term had the extra mana,
Yeah.
meant they could hero power, which means they're out of range of Leroy right now. So that's actually had a follow-on effect as well.
And set them up for this potential Savage
Right.
Draw. So that, look, if I'm going to talk to them later on, whether we haven't interviewed them if they win or not. But I'm going to talk to them and see how sort of far forward they actually plan that.
Alright, that was the game, and I hope you liked all the analysis that we did. This is, again, my first video, and I'm hopefully going to be doing a lot more of these. So if you have any comments or suggested lines that I didn't see, or maybe you just want to talk about Hearthstone in general, just talk about it in the comments below. Subscribe if you want to see any more of these videos, and yeah, let me know what you think.